G'day there, everybody, and welcome to this very special live broadcast once again on our Facebook page here. Thanks so much for joining us. I can't wait to get stuck into today's topic because I know it's a hot topic for so many of you that are running your business, wondering how do you take advantage of current news to promote your business in a way that journalists or publications are going to be susceptible or be acceptable of, because it can sometimes, I think it can be very difficult to understand how to approach a publication or a journo and get your story published. But you know that if that was to happen, you're going to get some great results for your business. So I'm really excited today. We've got Bec Derrington joining us today. Bec is a PR and marketing professional with over 20 years experience and is the founder of the disruptor publicity platform SourceBottle.com. Now, if you don't know what that is, you'll be able to go and check that out. The team will put a link in the chat box right now, so you can go and click on that. Please, though, stay focused on the live for now. You can go and look at that afterwards. But it is a subscription service that distributes up to 14 million emails a year. Each of those emails is crammed with free media opportunities. So you do need to become a subscriber to that because it's going to help you. We'll get back to that shortly. Bec has also done the hard yards as a media relations consultant, earned her stripes when it comes to pitching story ideas to journalists and bloggers. So not just having this source bottle business, but has also done the hard yards herself. So you're going to learn from somebody who's walked the walk, not just talking the talk. And she wants to share this knowledge with you today so you know how to pitch your story in a unique way so the media will take it on board, and you've got to do it at the exact time. So today in this Facebook Live, you are going to learn how to get the full benefit of media attention when a story is breaking and why timing is so important. So you're going to also cover off the landmines of what could happen when you do the newsjacking, especially if you do it wrong, and show you how 3 brands got it wrong, and 3 news stories or trends you could jump on today, like right now after this live, and how to do it. So welcome to the Facebook Live, Bec. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Ben. It's nice to be here.
Hey, my absolute pleasure. Now, just so you know, I am monitoring the chat box on my phone. If you do have a question at any point in time, feel free to ask it. We'll also get you to hit that love or like button down. You'll see that down there. I'll do it now. And you can send lots of love hearts or lots of love thumbs up flying across the screen to show your appreciation as Bec goes through today's live stream, teaching you a little bit about how to go about newsjacking. So let's get stuck straight into it, Bec, and maybe you could run us through a bit about what newsjacking is, and start talking us through exactly what people need to do if they want to get their business in the media.
All right. Well, I'll share my screen. Can you see it now? That's I've done a sort of a quick little PowerPoint just so, because some of the concepts around this might be a little bit different, and there's some great diagrams that help visually depict what I'm going to talk about. So as you've mentioned, Ben, I'm going to talk about newsjacking, this concept called newsjacking, and when you newsjack a current sort of story or trend, and you can really leverage the power of current news to elevate your brand or your personal reputation. Okay, let me see.
Awesome.
Okay.
For those of you that have just joined us as well, thanks so much. Make sure you share this around on your Facebook page. Anybody else who you think should be learning how to do newsjacking, then get them involved.
Get them involved. So look, oh, sorry, you go.
No, off you go. Let's jump straight into it. What is newsjacking?
I'm so keen to talk about newsjacking. So when it comes to newsjacking, so the whole concept of newsjacking was created by a guy called David Meerman Scott, and he's got an incredible reputation. He wrote a book about it. And look, in short, the whole concept of newsjacking is piggybacking a story and offering up your expert commentary and story idea on some aspect of it, which might sound a little bit sort of confusing. He also says it's sort of, newsjacking is the art and science of injecting your ideas into a current news story so that you get noticed. So, obviously it's a lot easier to join the flow of news about a particular topic when it's hot and rolling off the press than if you're trying to sort of cut through the noise and create the sort of, noise around your story when it's not really being paid attention from anywhere else. So that's the art, that's the concept of newsjacking. And it's a really powerful tool when it's done properly. And I sort of feel like it's probably easier to show an example of a good newsjacking effort This was obviously years ago. This is back in 2013, but it's still regarded as one of the most clever ways of newsjacking something, you know, that was happening. And it was done in real time, which is one of the reasons why it was so powerful. So back in 2013, we had the Super Bowl. And Oreo was one of the actual big advertisers in the Super Bowl as well. So they'd spent millions, obviously, in terms of coming up with the creative, and then also and also securing that airtime during the Super Bowl, which is, you know, they spend like entire budgets on that. But even more powerful was the fact that during the broadcast, there was a blackout. And I think it was, I'm just trying to see how long it was like 34 minutes, which is just outrageous.
Yeah.
So there was this 34-minute hiatus. And during that time, Oreo sort of ran with it, quickly came up with this sort of visual concept saying, power out, no problem. You can still dunk in the dark. So very, very clever. I mean, obviously it costs virtually nothing to create that visual. It was then shared, retweeted 10,000 times in that 1 hour. And according to a lot of advertising experts, that was a bigger hit than the ad that they spend millions and millions of dollars actually creating, because it was timely, it was clever, it was witty, and it was relevant to their brand. You know, you can still dunk in the dark. So that was sort of one of the showstopper efforts of news jacking, and so it's still held out as you know, an example of effective newsjacking, just so you can visually sort of see what newsjacking is. So I think the other thing that's really, really important about sort of newsjacking, or understanding the concept of newsjacking and then applying it to your own life, is understanding what the life cycle of a news story is. So, you know, if you're look, and this is from this book, Newsjacking by David Meerman Scott. And he talks about how where the peak is and where that sweet spot is. So in here, we're talking about right here is this beautiful sweet spot when it comes to newsjacking. And the timing is so pivotal. Although there are, you know, and we can talk about this in a little bit, but there are other opportunities along this news cycle, or the life of a news story, where you can also newsjack, but in a slightly different way. So we look down here, you've got breaking news. And then at that breaking news moment is usually when we're only covering off the very top elements of a story. So we're looking at, you know, the who, what, where, when, and why, and sort of sometimes the how, but it's all very, very skinny on detail. So we say that's like the first para of a press release. It's that skinny detail where we only sort of know the basic facts, and journalists are scrambling to get that out there first. You know, it's a very, very competitive, cutthroat industry. From that point, though, before it starts to become sort of a proper news story, there's a whole lot of background information that needs to sort of come into play. And that's the beautiful spot where newsjacking is really, really powerful, because journalists are actively searching for experts and like what they call the second para of the story. So all the flesh around the story, the background, the other angles, the human story, the human face, other examples, and opportunities for experts to sort of add their voice to the conversation about that particular relevant news story. So that's a really, really powerful time if you can, you know, hit that sweet spot to get your story out there and get your expertise noticed by the people who are desperately.
Would you say that would be hours after the story comes out, days, or does it vary? Like, how long typically would that sweet spot be? How quickly does that happen?
Well, I would say that's contracting daily. So when you know, if you've got something that, you know, so perhaps a story back before social media was so prevalent, you know, 10 years ago, you might have had the shelf life of the story would be a little longer. Now that we've got such a hungry demand for constant updates of news, and we've got so many platforms distributing immediate sort of news stories, that time is contracting, but that's only when you're sort of looking at certain elements of a story. So some of the very sort of superficial levels. If you're looking at sort of content marketing type approaches, so not just media releases and pitching to news and journalists. If you're looking at more sort of a long tail way of newsjacking a story, if you get a blog post out there, that will have a longer shelf life. And perhaps you might even if you miss this opportunity here, sort of, second rounds of stories and sort of different arms that are still prevalent maybe, a day or two later might still be relevant. And so you still might be able to newsjack a story with a little bit longer a lead time.
I mean, if you look at that Oreo example, it wouldn't have worked 24 hours later because the lights were back on. So
exactly.
It was very time dependent, wasn't it? So
very
time critical. So thanks to those of you that have just joined us, by the way. If you are enjoying the live stream, hit the thumbs up, hit the love button.
Yeah, hit
make
the
sure
love
you
button.
share this Facebook Live. Yeah. Make sure you share it out there so everybody can learn from Bec here. We are joined by Bec Derrington, who is the founder of SourceBottle, which is a disruptor in the media sort of industry, doing something quite unique. But Bec has had a lot of experience with newsjacking and getting publications to print stories. And that's what today's topic is all about, is newsjacking, how to get your story in the media. So that's what newsjacking is. All
yes.
Right.
So that's what newsjacking is. And that's kind of, when we talk about why timing is critical, as you say, in instances like the Oreo example, not only was it really clever and witty, but it was time critical. And a lot of social type pitching is time critical because, people are looking, like journalists and media are looking, they're following a hashtag, they're, at that exact time. And those are the times when timing is everything. But for some sort of stories where you want a more in-depth analysis, the timing might be a little bit longer in terms of, opportunities.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
yeah.
so let's...
Now,
sorry, you.
No, you're right. If anybody has any questions, feel free to type it into the comments box below this live stream. And I am monitoring it here on my phone, and we'll be more than happy to pass the questions on to Bec as we go through. So if you do have a question, you're not sure about something, feel free to ask. We're here to answer it.
Yes. Thank you. So, so we're talking about now. Let's looking at the benefits of newsjacking. I think some of the benefits are quite obvious, but perhaps sort of maybe overlooked are the fact that journalists are actively looking for someone at that exact moment with your expertise. So, if even if you've got sort of a blog post that's maybe repurposed content that's kind of coming up and it's relevant again, or this is a great opportunity because journalists will be looking for someone with your expertise at that exact moment. So it quickly establishes you as an authority. I mean, the reason I love publicity so much, as opposed to sort of a paid promotion, is because it's a third-party endorsement. Now, that third party could be the media, but it could also be an influencer. It could be somebody who's writing or who's sort of seen as a bit of a maven on a particular topic. But if they're referencing you and your expertise at that exact moment, they're showcasing you as someone with the authority to talk on the topic, which is very, very powerful as a third-party endorsement. And it also heightens visibility. So you might be blogging about a particular topic and a great expert in that area. You really, really know your stuff. And then someone with some sort of influence or with another audience or a bigger audience or even just, just slightly diverse audience comes across your particular sort of post or your content, and then they position you as an authority and they share that your expertise with their audience. Of course, that's heightening your visibility, and it's very, very easy to do. And in a lot of cases, we're talking about what you're already doing, but just doing it really smarter, so repurposing content or jumping on a story when you know that you've got something to add at that exact moment. So this is this whole concept of newsjacking, and it's a very conscious effort that it's like a mindset where you think, oh, okay, well, I need to get my head around looking for opportunities and commenting and having an opinion at that exact moment. It's very, very important.
So how often have you found, Bec, that you could just repurpose content versus, because people think with journalism that journalists would be interviewing somebody, but that's quite often not the case, is it? Like you've got to write the article or submit your content. How often is it that you're just submitting something you've previously generated, and that's enough?
Look, I think, you know, people that have really great content available and they're creating really great topical content all the time, they're very well positioned to be sought out and found, you know, just through SEO efforts online. But, and repurposing content is a really important way, particularly with, say, you know, recurring events, repeat efforts. And in a lot of cases, none of the news is new. You know, a lot of the same sort of topics, the same areas pop up. And I actually always say, Ben, when you're looking at even responding to a, you know, call outs on a responsive, like a reactive media tool like SourceBottle, you need to be, you know, thinking in your head at all times, having a couple of ready responses that help you, that you can throw in really, really quickly, because in most cases, there's nothing sort of incredibly novel or new about what journalists are looking for. It just sometimes it might be time-based or location-based, or it's a different sort of twist on something, you know, you've already been talking about. You know, if you're say a marriage counsellor, for example, you know, married at first sight is a fascinating kind of concept, and that show, you know, is shown every year. But so a lot of the same stuff that you'd be giving new couples, new whatever advice on, would be really relevant if you wanted to sort of spice it up and apply it to the show. So it's not like you're coming up with incredibly new novel content all the time, or story ideas to pitch. It's just kind of a different contextually. And so I think it's really important to bear that in mind, so you can prepare for a lot of these things, and make sure that you do leverage from it. It's not as hard as you might think it is, if you're prepared. So look, this is an example of you know, a newsjacking effort that's gone bad, and again, they had plenty of time to prepare for this. And I'm sure a lot of you would know about this anyway. You probably would have seen it and come across the sort of outrage in the mainstream legacy media about it. So this was a campaign for, obviously in 2015 by Woolworths, where they were trying to newsjack in on Anzac Day. And there are a lot of reasons why this failed. And we'll talk about some of the landmines when it comes to newsjacking to be aware of. But in short, it was seen as disrespectful. Woolworths were you know, trying to wedge themselves in a place where they didn't belong. And they were kind of trying to commercialize something that was kind of very sacred and dear to a lot of people. And so this was sort of some of the results. So we had some, I don't know, like a witty kind of meme that was created about, you know, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I don't know if anyone's as old as me in terms of remembering this show as a kid, but, you know, so playing on that word fresh, but just saying, lest we forget, fresh in our memories, obviously the Prince of Bel-Air, but just mocking them really. And so, you know, at best you could be mocked by making a poor, you know, effort at newsjacking, and at worst you can be boycotted, you know, with an audience that's outraged by the fact that you'd be so disrespectful, and, you know, people sort of questioning the brand integrity. That's obviously having worked in PR crisis management, that's not ideal. So that's an example of of a really bad newsjacking effort. And I think it's amazing someone thought that was okay, because, you know, as soon as I saw it, I went, that's not in good taste. Really bad judgment call. It is surprising. But sometimes we can get so close to the brand that, you know, and in fairness, we all make mistakes. But this was one, and they'd spent a lot of money because they had a whole website sort of set up that actually you could superimpose images, you know, with Anzac kind of overlays and things. So it would have been quite an expensive exercise. That was, And look, they may have had good intentions. You know, absolutely. No one means to do anything disrespectful on purpose, especially in an organisation like that. But it's interesting to see that even the big guys can get it wrong. So, you know, that's right. It's going to, and that's one of the risks, I guess, when you are newsjacking, but you need to be informed. Yeah, you need to be informed, and you know, and there are a couple of landmines. That's one particular landmine that I refer to in a little bit that you can avoid easily. This is another really, really bad one, and it's surprising. Another big company, AT&T, They did this in 2013, never forget. And of course, that was the image was used to honour the, September 11 tragedy. But of course, it was viewed, as it probably was meant to be viewed, as a marketing ploy for a product. So hundreds responded in outrage and disgust. The tweet was deleted, and AT&T issued an apology. But of course, that's too little, sort of too late, and people are just appalled at the idea that you try to commercialise something as tragic as the September 11. And so you had all these fans of the product kind of questioning their moral standing, and of course not ideal.
Got to be very, very careful. And thanks if you've just joined us, by the way, for this live stream. If you do have a question, pop it down in the comments below. If you are enjoying the live stream, I'm going to encourage you. I've got my phone right here. I'm going to do it myself. Just click on the like button, click on the love button. Let us know that you're enjoying the live stream and that you're learning a lot from it. And of course, share it around. Let other people know that we're here live right now, where you can ask any questions you like. Feel free to ask whatever you like.
Yes, please do.
Yeah. And if you see me looking over here, I'm actually looking at a TV screen off camera here. You can't see. So you're thinking, what's Ben keep looking at? That's what I'm looking at. There you go.
So look, and this is another really poorly executed. Well, the execution wasn't the problem. It was actually what they wrote that was the problem. And again, they might have been really trying to honour the death of David Bowie, but in this particular instance, so I don't know if you can see that there's a superimposed sort of croc behind that lightning bolt, and with the croc branding saying your magic will be missed, but your inspiration lives on forever. Hashtag David Bowie. So they were wedging their brand in on the hashtag of David Bowie when everyone was mourning his untimely passing. And so you have enormously outraged fans that just think that's abhorrent. In fact, when I was reading the write-up about it, they were talking about how the commentators on this bad example of newsjacking were saying they could believe that there were 39 people who liked it. It was up for a period of time. They pulled it down again. They apologised, but they were just absolutely, just thinking that's so wrong, and it does so much damage to the brand. And people, it's sort of funny because despite the fact that social media works at this sort of ridiculous, sort of frenetic pace, you've still got people remember slights like that. I mean, you remember the Woolworths lest we forget, and it does really tarnish the brand reputation for a long time, despite how short our memories seem to be with lots of things. Those sorts of things are remembered. So, okay, so I've given you some examples of some terrible newsjacking efforts.
Yep. Don't do those things.
Please don't do those things.
Yeah, if someone passes away, don't use it as an excuse to newsjack. That's probably a good thing to avoid.
I think so. I said, there are three landmines. I think the first one is don't try to sell, and I think that's the Woolworths example. That's the AT&T example. They're both whether they intentionally were trying to do that or not. That's how consumers perceive it. So perception's reality. Don't sell. Don't try to sell. Don't wedge your brand in there. It's not. It's just not appropriate. Don't try to newsjack deaths, disasters, anything like that. It never ends well. If the temptation is there, just please try to avoid it. There are better ways, better things to newsjack on, and the connection must be really obvious. So the one of the other reasons why Woolworths failed was because they, it was such a tenuous connection. The word fresh in our memories, fresh food people, like that's just pathetic, like in terms of the connection. It's not meaningful. There was a really great, there was an example of a good sort of social media newsjacking effort, and it was done by the record label. It was David Bowie's record label, and they did a very sort of sensitive tweet, a tribute to him and his life, and it was relevant. They were his record producer, and they were talking about, putting him on I think playing his music for the rest of the month or whatever. They were going to do a special tribute, and he would be really missed. That made sense. That wasn't seen as being opportunistic. It was under a brand message, but it made sense. They were his record label. So, the connection's got to be is really, really important. Probably one of the most important ingredients when it comes to that.
Yeah. So I think you know, it's difficult for people to know because that stuff is very popular in the news. You know, if there's a celebrity does pass away or there's a disaster like we saw, you know, just recently in New Zealand with this gunman. You know, they're very widespread news. So I think the temptation is there to try and ride on those coattails, but it's very, very risky.
It is really risky because it's hard to make it tasteful and for it to be a meaningful connection. So
what did Crocs have to do with David Bowie?
Exactly. I don't know. I could never imagine him wearing a pair of Crocs. Let me.
No, I think no. I'm trying to think. I've never seen him in a pair of Crocs, and unless he wasn't like an advertising. Ambassador in it? No. I guess if he was, maybe it would make sense if he was associated with the company, but otherwise, yeah, it makes no sense.
It makes no sense. It just seems like a grab for news and cutting into the news. So, you know, Meerman Scott put out this as sort of, you know, a little cheat sheet for newsjacking, and it might be hard to see, and I'm very happy for this to be available. I don't know whether you can see a lot of the stuff. The main things to be element, there are three elements to newsjacking. Sort of one, finding the news to jack, formulating a strategy in real time. I mean, obviously the timeliness is very, very important. And three, instantly getting your take into the market. So understanding and working out how you're going to newsjack it most effectively for you and your brand and your business. So as I said, it might be through a social media tweet, it might be sort of, you know, leveraging a hashtag, it might be writing a more detailed analysis with lots of keywords that will be found sort of in an optimized blog post. And then sort of tweeting it or putting out like a media, not a media release, sort of like a media alert, hitting up a particular journalist that you know is interested in that topic or you have a relationship with, or who is writing about that topic as another angle. There are whole lots of different ways that you can actually execute it. I think very, very importantly though is thinking the process through and not being too knee-jerk about it, despite the timeliness, the essential element of time and being very responsive. It's really important to think it through. And as I said, in a lot of cases, you know, the Oreos example is one where that's just someone who's very, very sort of quick-witted. But you don't need to be quick-witted because a lot of these sort of things are either seasonal, cyclical, or it's something you've already done that you've repurposed to take advantage of the timeliness of an issue. I mean, an example of newsjacking for me was when I launched SourceBottle, because I wasn't ready to launch SourceBottle, but and this just shows how old SourceBottle is, but nearly 10 years ago, Kevin Rudd was the Prime Minister.
Good old Kevin Rudd.
I think it was when he was Prime Minister the first time. And
still fresh in our memories, unfortunately.
Yeah. Lest we forget. And so, and he went on Rove when Rove was still a show, and he said fair shake of the SourceBottle. And of course, that was sort of I had to press go. I had to just sort of try to newsjack that sort of opportunity where it was a very popular show. He also used that expression quite a few times, and people were mocking him a bit because the actual real expression is fair sucker the SourceBottle. If you're a Queenslander, you know it's fair sucker the SourceBottle. And but I didn't sort of, you know, and so, you know, you sort of there were a few different angles that came through. It was you can give this SourceBottle a shake, or did Rudd get a fair shake of the SourceBottle, or those sorts of things. A few different angles that I could take advantage of, but that is another example of sort of acting quickly.
Yeah. Now, by the way, if you can't read some of these slides, that previous slide of yours was out of a book. Can we just go back there, by David Meerman Scott, called Newsjacking? Maybe one of the team can just maybe one of the team can put a link to the book in Amazon or something down in the comments, and that way they can grab that book. So David Meerman Scott, Newsjacking.
Yes, it's a really good book, and you'll see a whole lot of very, very effective tips He's kind of the grandfather of newsjacking. He coined the phrase. So obviously one of those elements in terms of how to newsjack is looking at sources of newsjacking. So how do you find opportunities to newsjack? And Mim and Scott actually suggest this, and it's something that I use myself. I'm a bit of a news devourer, though. I love news. I'm addicted to news, which is kind of good if you're in my industry. But I know a lot of people switch off from sort of current news. So you might need to just assess what your appetite is for following the news, because it can be a little bit depressing, I know. But, you know, Google News is a really fantastic source of what's going on, you know, in that immediate moment. And because they've got access to a lot of your searching history, they'll often show you, if you just look up, do a Google News search on your PC or laptop or whatever, your device, you'll probably find a whole lot of relevant news. They'll spit out a whole heap of news that you'll find relevant because they know what you've been searching for. Yeah. So it's quite an effective tool to just have a quick skim through once a day to see what's happening in the news today. And the 3 stories that I got that I have sort of that I can suggest that, you know, people could newsjack potentially, and just to quickly show you how, I've got them all from this morning when I had a quick look on Google News. So that's one really great source of newsjacking opportunities. Another is setting up Google Alerts with relevant keywords. And if you don't know how to do that, just Google it. So that's really, really can be very effective. So
that's a good tip too, Bec, because I've got Google Alerts set up if somebody puts my company name or my name or, you know, something like that in. And it does alert me if somebody does something where they write an article or put my name in it, I get alerted. So that's always a handy tip as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the very base. They definitely should be doing that so that people know when they're being, you know, obviously. So
if you're getting mentioned, you hope it's positive.
Yes, let's hope it's positive. Yeah. Yeah, so other words, like, so for me, like if I was doing, you know, newsjacking is a great word. So I'd find out any contemporary, like blogs or articles or news that are sort of mentioning that kind of concept. Also, hashtag searches are really powerful. A lot of journalists, when they're sourcing new leads to newsjack, so when they're in that little sweet spot and they're scurrying around trying to find experts, relevant experts, that sort of thing, they'll look up, you know, Twitter is the sandpit for journalists. So, you know, if you don't like it, I apologize, but you really should be looking at Twitter in terms of following the journalists that you know, talk about things of interest to you and fostering relationships, at least knowing what they're tweeting about. But also hashtags and Twitter is just one of the most powerful tools for journalists in terms of sourcing new media leads. So it's a very powerful tool, and ignore it at your peril if you really want to take advantage of media.
I thought you'd find most of the journalists somewhere like LinkedIn or something, but so they're hanging out on Twitter. I guess they're getting their news ideas off of Twitter as well, aren't they?
Well, absolutely. Nearly every journalist you know they'll always have a Twitter handle unless they've had a bad experience, but they'll have a Twitter handle because it's a broadcasting tool for themselves. They're expected to have their own followers. They're expected to drive traffic, and Twitter's a really, really powerful tool for that.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it was sort of when I started SourceBottle, that was the one tool that I found the most effective. Now, LinkedIn, you're right. LinkedIn, particularly since they've introduced hashtags, it's become, you know, quite a good searching tool, particularly for expertise. So don't ignore that. But if you want to see what journalists are talking about, they'll be doing it on Twitter. And also, a lot of people kind of create hashtag threads via Twitter. It's much, much easier, and because it's so responsive and it's so quick. So yes, hashtags are really important. So if you've got particular hashtags, try to own hashtags, try to choose which hashtags you want to be known for, and sort of make sure that you utilize them yourself when you're actually doing, when you're tweeting, when you're posting. But also that's a great sort of search tool. And curiosity. I just think, you know, one of the best sort of elements or tools in your arsenal is your own curiosity. Thinking about when a particular news story breaks, if there's some sort of relevance to you, start thinking about the questions that people, the follow-on questions, not the immediate questions, the follow-on questions, like, well, who, you know, in a particular, so just if we were talking about a marriage counsellor, okay, well, when we're looking at, say, maths type, sort of the hype around maths, and looking at sort of, you know, what about these sort of, you know, blended and extended families, and how they, if these couples work out, you know, how does that impact on their family life at home, and how do they integrate into each other's lives, and how do couples that live apart, how do they make it work? And, you know, you start thinking, if you have that sort of curiosity about how a story, how it could be more sort of fleshed out more fully based on the sorts of questions that people would be asking about, you can start thinking of great newsworthy kind of jacking opportunities.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. Yeah, cool.
Okay, so yeah, Google News is really, really good. So now we're looking at, I sort of promised that I would look at today's news, and as I said, I went to Google News this morning to just sort of see some generic topics.
What can we newsjack?
What can you newsjack today?
Let's look what we could. What can we news? Let's newsjack.
Let's newsjack. So this is a really interesting story, and this is out of the UK, which is great. So it's not too old, because, you know, we're a little bit behind a lot of these, you know, larger. Because, well, more populous countries. So what's happening at the moment in the UK, The Guardian has just put out this article talking about supermarket special offers contribute to obesity, says a report. And it's a study by the Cancer Research of UK, backs up calls for restrictions on unhealthy food deals. So this, you buy one, get one free, special offers on unhealthy food and drinks should be restricted in an attempt to curb Britain's expanding waistlines, experts have said. So that is fabulous. So if you're a health, if you're a sports, if you're in fitness, if you're in any of those sorts of things, if you're in consumer behavior, if you're an expert on retail trends, there's a whole lot of experts that could really jump in and leverage a great story opportunity like that. Will Australia follow suit? You know, following on from that sugar tax debate, there's a whole lot of really great opportunities to sort of jump in and add your opinion on a story. And see, that's the other thing that's really, really important with newsjacking. Have something to say. It's going to fall flat if you're just reporting the news, or if you're just, you know, also ran typing with the news, you know, oh yeah, I agree with that expert, or, you know, without adding any extra element, without adding any sort of depth of what you're trying to add in terms of showcasing your expertise. So that's
you
really
can write something, for example, why getting rid of the buy one, get one free offer on sugary foods won't work, or something like that.
Exactly. Be controversial.
Yeah.
I mean, the news, what makes a story newsworthy, all those elements still apply. You know, the journalist has to think that this is going to be something of interest to their readers. So, you know, you've got to add something to the argument. And if you want to be good talent for a journalist, if you want them to keep coming back to you, you need to have strong opinions. It's really, really important. So I just think that's a great opportunity. What do you think? You think that would work?
Yeah.
I think, now this is another one. I thought this was really fascinating. And I started to see a lot of journalists on Twitter actually commenting on this. I don't know if you've heard about this. So this was so NASA had to cancel its historic all-female spacewalk, claiming its suits simply don't fit women. So astronauts Anne McLean and Christina Koch were due to take their spacewalk together on March 29th, but when NASA confirmed NASA confirmed it had cancelled the event due in part to spacesuit availability. How ridiculous! And I saw a really fantastic tweet by Annabelle Crabb, and I think it was retweeted and liked, you know, hundreds of times. And it was like, oh well, who would have thought they need suits to wear? Like, you know, of course. You know, you can't blame NASA. Who would have thought they needed suits to wear? Yeah. So, you know, fantastic sort of concept if you're talking about gender issues, if you're talking about, you know, and in fact, actually that was reported in Women's Agenda. which I thought was really fascinating. So if you're talking about diversity, workplaces, that sort of thing, you know, that's something that you could add a bit of sizzle to, that sort of story about the disparity.
Certainly not rocket science.
I love it. Fantastic.
There's my silly sense of humour coming through. Come on, NASA,
great.
what are you doing?
Yeah, come on, NASA. But you know, if you were to, you know, check out that hashtag, whether it was, I think it was NASA, or I can't even remember if it was spacesuit, but you know, you wouldn't take you long to find the hashtag that's trending under.
Look, and
adds up to that conversation.
Yeah, if you were recruiting and you wanted to get more women into your business, that would be an opportunity for you to say something like, you know, don't be an astronaut, come work with us, we've got suits that fit, or something like that, you know.
Perfect. Yeah, so some really fun elements, and that's great for social. If you're trying to position yourself as an expert in, you know, well, women in leadership and taking women seriously and their roles in these sorts of mainly male dominated. If you're in the STEM fields and you're sort of trying to push the promotion of, you know, promote you know, science, tech, and you know, with women, if you're in the education sector, this is another great sort of conversation that you can add your voice to.
Yeah, I mean, and NASA's a big player, so I can see why that would work. Because if you're going to be controversial against something NASA's done, that's going to get you some attention. But like I said, you can't. I don't think you can just make fun of it. I think you probably need to, like you said, have a story or something around it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but you could easily, if you were sort of trying to position yourself as a leader on feminist issues, on LinkedIn, for example, you could pose a question around this to get a discussion going with your audience. There are whole lots of ways to enhance your visibility, newsjacking current affairs.
Yeah, all righty, great stuff.
And this, yes. So this last one, I promised 3. So this last one is quite new. It's quite terrifying, actually. It says, companies no longer comfortable storing data in Australia, Microsoft warns. So this is Brad Smith, the chief legal officer, and he said foreign companies and governments were no longer comfortable sending their data to Australia after the Assistance and Access Bill, which gives security agencies improved powers to access the encrypted data of suspects. So, and in fact, I saw something else today at Atlassian, is it Farquhar? I can't remember his name. Scott, someone from Atlassian was also commenting on this, talking about the relaxation, I think, of some of the controls around security agencies getting accessing power to encrypted data of suspects. So it's to do with sort of, you know, technology. If you're an expert in data security, security analyst, any of those sorts of fields, or you're even talking about sort of importing, exporting expertise, you know, there are a whole lot of different professionals that could provide really expert comment on this kind of thing. And this is a really great way of showcasing your expertise by having a strong opinion in the area. So that's my 3rd example. And as I said, that was a quick skim of Google News this morning.
Yeah, so that's the tip. I mean, you've found 3 there, 3 things that different professions could newsjack. Yeah. And I think, I mean, that's just an example that if you're paying attention. So what do you suggest people do every morning with their cup of coffee, scan the news, and if they think there's something there that they can comment on, then what? Do you then contact the journalist that submitted that wrote that news, or how do you?
You could.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, and if you have problems finding it, I mean, look, a lot of media contact lists, you know, you go through just ring the publication and they might give you a generic email. But I think you'd find nearly every single journalist that reported on those stories would have a Twitter handle. So, and all you need to do is
with Twitter, if you just mention somebody in your comments, even though you're not connected, does it alert them? Does it? Is that what happens?
Yeah. They get a notification.
I don't use Twitter anywhere near enough. I have Twitter accounts, but
oh, look, you know, it's funny because I know in terms of engagement on Twitter, it's not great, but well, not for some of us mere mortals. For like other people with really great, you know,
celebrities, they get a lot on there. Or big companies,
they get a lot of love on Twitter. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and I think, you know, so that's. But I think for journalists, if you know somebody's written a story, you could use the same hashtag. I'm sure they're monitoring hashtags, are they? Is that?
Yeah.
Searching
Well, just
with hashtags?
retweet their tweet. because they'll be sharing their own stories. And
Yes.
so you could say, I think this is great. I'd like to add, I've got something else I can add. And you can make that sort of a visual, or you could say, can you please follow me so I can DM you? Either way, just say, I've got a great angle to add to this story, or I'd really like to reach out because I need to talk to you. Most publications have, have hotlines, have contacts, sort of generic contact things that you can use their Facebook pages to try to reach out, or just use a, join in on it with a hashtag thread, like, as part of that conversation, but also create some content around it. So have something where you could sort of say to them, oh, look, I've done this great blog, I've done a quick post about this. If you've got something a little bit more involved in terms of your opinion, post it on a blog post and then tag them in a tweet and say, look, I'd like to add this to the discussion. And what are your thoughts? Or do you want to contact me? If you want to contact me, my contact details are on the post, or reach out. Like, there are so many ways. You've just got to think about it. The other thing too, Ben, is if they're going through the news in the morning, as I said, just maybe have in your mind 3 to 5 different potential story angles that you'd love to be a part of. So, if you are a nutritionist, and so that first story about the 2-for-1 sort of promotions, those sorts of deals, which encourage us to eat too much, you might sort of want to say, okay, well, you might sort of have a couple of ready-made comments on those sorts of things, whether it might not be this promotion is bad because of this reason. It could say we eat too much, and that really feeds into that same discussion. So have a piece ready, some sort of thought leadership comment ready on the fact that we probably eat too much, and you've got all these experts that can sort of also sort of join in with that discussion. But it's not that hard when you sort of think about, well, what do I want to be famous for? What do I want to be known for? And have those things ready to hand.
Have those things ready to go. Yeah, great stuff. So how do people find out more from you, Bec? I know you've got SourceBottle.com, and that's not S-A-U, that's S-O-U. R-C-E, as in the source of the news. Yeah, not the sauce that you put on your pie.
I think I've got both, so even if they were to look that up, it probably.
Oh, really? That's clever. That's well done, because that could be done like someone could easily put sauce in as in a sauce bottle, but yeah, it's S-O-U-R-C-E, and we'll put a link down below. There already is a link down below, so you can go and click on that to subscribe to the emails that come out from SourceBottle. Anything else that you want to finish up on, Bec? Some tips or hints that you can just help people out with, and we'll take any questions if you've got any questions, gang. So feel free to type them into the question box down below.
Yeah, no, I don't have any. Look, the only tip I would say is just sign up to get free media alerts on SourceBottle, because, as I said, it's free, and that's another way of being able to stay or recognise the news trends, because often they'll be predicting what's about to come out in the news. So that's another way of.
And I recommend SourceBottle. We've been working together with Bec for a number of years, and very professional at what you do, which is great. But I think it's also an easier way for people to get involved in commentating on things as experts, because some people may be a little bit uncomfortable or lack a bit of confidence. As we're on SourceBottle, there are a lot of opportunities that come up where you could be something like a podcast guest or write a blog post for somebody. And so rather than you worry about it going viral on some big media, you get the opportunity. I mean, there's those bigger opportunities there as well, but it's great to be able to dip your toe in the whole thing of becoming an authority in your industry and have that opportunity. And SourceBottle, I mean, how many opportunities are there a week that you shoot out?
Okay, that's a good question. I think there's probably there'd be about 100 a week.
There's a lot of opportunities for people to jump on and comment. So yeah, great service and a great place for you to hang out if you want to become an authority in your industry. All right, well, we're pretty much going to wrap it up then. If there's no questions, nothing coming through at the moment that I can see. Here we go. Matt Hammonds has asked, if we don't know anyone in the journalist world, where do we start? Who do we approach first? That's Matt.
Is it Matt?
Thanks.
Matt. Hi, Matt. Look, I would say, who do you want to know? So first, do a list. Get a piece of paper. Think of 5 publications or, 5 digital media outlets or 5 influencers. I'll say 5 storytellers, because it doesn't have to be, it could be someone on Instagram. It could be someone who's writing really fantastic sort of content in a blog. Find those five names, get 5 names. It's a great start. That's all you need. Find out, which those publications are, who within that publication that you want to reach out to. And if worst comes to worst, just look up contact details or look up, if it's a mainstream publication, they'll have a very easy sort of generic email address. If you want more specific email details, you can sometimes find them by contacting them and saying, look, do they have a direct email, or using that general one, or hitting them up on Facebook, or looking them up on Twitter, as I said, and just get 5 contacts to start with. Start following them, start seeing the sort of stuff they write about, the tone of voice, the tone of language, the kinds of, who their audience is, and that will help inform you of the potential opportunities you have to contribute to that publication, whether it's by contacting them directly or by using some of the techniques we've talked about today. That's the first step. It's really easy. And once you realize how much information is out there with contact details, you'll be staggered by how easy it is to reach out.
I think I'll add to that is one of the things you could do, Matt, is make sure that in your week you set a time aside every day where you do check out the news for certain keywords. So you can use those Google alerts or just scan through the news headlines. And when you see something that's relevant to you or your industry, or what you think would be relevant to your customer base, then make a note of who that person is, and then go find them on LinkedIn, find them on Twitter, and start connecting and following what it is they're doing. Because the likelihood is, if they're into one, written one story that's relevant, they might write more as well. So I think
can I just suggest another little hack, Ben, too, is if you've got competitors in the space, maybe do set up a Google alert on them and see where their names are appearing and who's commenting on their stuff, and if they've got a speaking opportunity or whatever. And then you'll find, because those people are likely to look beyond that one source as an expert in that particular area, and clearly they're writing about that area.
Yeah. So thanks for that question, Matt. Hopefully that helped you out. If we got any other questions, please pop them in quickly, because we are going to wrap that up. Thanks for your thumbs up. If you did enjoy the live stream, smash that thumbs up button, smash that love button, and share this video because it will be on Facebook now for you to watch. So if you did miss the beginning of the live stream and you want to go back and see the beginning where Bec explains exactly what newsjacking is and when is the best time to newsjack, and some examples of what not to do, you may have missed some of that, then you can go back and you can re-watch this live stream from the beginning. I can see no other comments coming through. So Bec, thanks so much for sharing your knowledge with us today. It's been absolutely amazing. It's always good to hear from somebody who's actually done it before themselves, because that's, sometimes that's half the battle, is knowing that, that it is possible and that someone has done it.
Oh, thank you. Thanks you so much for having me. It's been really fun.
Hey, my absolute pleasure. So you'll see the link in the comments, gang. Head to sourcebottle.com/subscribe. The link is in the chat down below. Just click on that link, go and subscribe to SourceBottle, and that way you'll get notified of any opportunities that are coming up to be able to comment, and you'll be there when it happens. And that's what it's all about, is that critical timing. Now, you don't want to wait too long because you might miss out. All right. Thanks so much once again. Just looking. Carolyn says, thanks, Bec. Thanks, Ben. Thank you, Carolyn. Matt says, great work. Thank you, Matt. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Look out for our next live stream. Next week, I believe we have a friend of mine, Ian Aldridge, coming on from Progressive Legal, and we're going to talk about trademarking and why that's so important. And I know that for some of you, that legal stuff is boring, but let me tell you, if you don't take care of some of that, it'll bite you in the bum, a little bit like doing the wrong kind of newsjacking. So you want to make sure you pay attention to that. So tune in again next week, same time, same place, same bat channel, where we'll take you through exactly how to make sure you protect your brand and your slogan, identity, etc. of your company. All right, Thanks for joining us. Take care.